Had some technical issues with both picture and sound, cleaned it up a little bit, but here's your warning and just, letting you know that, yes, I know, the management. That's dope, you have the Hellscreen thing in the background.
Yeah, like my partner made, it's like a cross-stitch thing. My partner made it for me like as a Christmas present. I guess technically it's like fan art.
Did you say it's stitched?
Yeah, hang on.
Can we see that? Can we get a close-up of that?
It's a bit dusty, but like I don't know if you can make out the detail on that.
Oh yeah,
but it's like
that's awesome.
So it's like she got like all the right colours from the logo, and it's like it is bang on. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's wild. Is that like your bookshelf? Is that records as well?
So we've got like all the art reference books that I buy and never look at. DVDs and Blu-rays I don't watch. Alien 3 figure my buddy got me.
Right.
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of retro games down there again, which I don't play, but I don't know if you can see.
Are those Wii games at the bottom? I see all white books.
These ones, that's all Master System. So the Master, I don't know if you know the Master System, but it was essentially the Sega's version of the NES. So all of the boxes had this, like, some people call it ugly, I call it inspired. A lot of YouTubers tend to be American. Their video game experience is American, so it doesn't really touch into the Master System that much.
That's true.
But like I say, in Europe it was big, the UK it was huge, and Brazil is still going on. I've got a lot of friends that are a little bit older than me that, they got into like the UK computer side of it, which was something that I was just too young for, I guess.
Right.
But like Commodore's Spectrums is the big one. Have you ever heard of the BBC Acorn?
Yep.
And it's so weird to me because the first time I saw it in a school, I just associate it with schools. But I kind of want one. And I don't even want to play it. I just want that kind of like beige block just on my desk, ready to.
Oh yeah.
Type.
Seriously. I mean, legit. I'll tell you. Look at this. See this computer? See this keyboard right here? I went out of my way to find something that looked like the old IBM keyboard.
Hell yeah.
I was like serious about buying an Amiga and just converting the keyboard, but it's a lot of work.
There's a lot of 90s nostalgia, but people don't often talk about like those big beige towers and the massive screens, and you see it in some games, but like that was a different time, It
really was. Were you one of those kids that had like a fat CRT playing Counter-Strike 1.6 and stuff like that?
I was a full-on console kid for quite a lot of my like early years. Like, I remember seeing my cousins, and they always had everything, right? They were those cousins, and me and my brother went over there, and they had a Mega Drive. I didn't even know what a Mega Drive was. Like I didn't even know what a video game was. And then I remember asking for that at Christmas, and we eventually got it when my sister was born as a reward for being good. So, and that was the Master System. That was my first console. And so, it went from like Master System to Mega Drive, and then Game Boy, and then eventually we did get a PC when I started like, our version of high school, because we needed it for work. You know how that goes. And then, I mean, I played PC games before that, but they always seemed like, I'd never be able to get a PC because they're too expensive. And then we happened to get one, and then it just sort of went from there, really. I mean, I still, in a weird kind of thing, I don't even really consider myself much of a gamer anymore, just because I don't really find a lot of time to do it. I've got a PS4, but, it's more a Netflix box at this point.
I do hear that a lot, but that a lot of people end up kind of like, the console collects dust. Most of the stuff that you play is like retro. Do you play stuff like Apex? Do you play stuff like, did you grow up with Halo or even, I don't know, like TF2 and stuff like that?
There was a time when I wasn't playing many games. Like I didn't get a PS2 for quite a long time because I went to university and I had my PC, which at that point, I had my own sort of custom PC. It wasn't really expensive or really good, but it worked, and it's kind of sort of low to mid-range. But by that point it was all about game dev. So I went to university to study games art and design. It was just about studying games and then going out and getting drunk with my friends. And I remember when the PS2 came out, it didn't grab me. I remember playing the first Xbox and thinking, oh, that's kind of neat, but I still don't know. And like I didn't even get like a PS3 till quite a few years afterwards. And I think even that was second hand, and that was because my brother got one, and only because Wipeout HD, like Wipeout, I will.
That was the selling point. Was Wipeout.
Yeah, because like I'm there are like maybe 3 or 4 games which are like I will buy on any system, like Doom, Wipeout, Homeworld. I love Homeworld, Streets of Rage. They're games I always play. Oh, and like maybe Ridge Racer. Maybe not actually. I might take that back because I don't play any of the modern ones, just the old ones. It wasn't that I wasn't interested in other stuff, but the things I remember fondly come from those eras of the 16-bit and that. I mean, that is pure nostalgia. But like at the same time, when it came to Hellscreen, I knew there were certain decisions I made which were it has to be interesting visually to me. I didn't want it to be something that anyone could just do without a bit of thought, and it had to be kind of quick to make. Because it was just me making it, right, and I didn't want to have to do. There was no way I was going to do big, massive open world because I don't want to. Which was very real because there was just no way I could have done it back then. It's that blue color because I didn't want to do black, white, and red because Madwell did that on the Wii. It didn't seem that original to me, and I didn't want to work with just 3 colors. It's low res because I just love that flat, crunchy kind of vibe, but also I didn't have to worry so much about texture seams on my models, and that was something that used to drive me mad when I'm playing a video game. Honestly, if I'm playing a video game and I see rocks with seams in them, drives me insane. It drives me insane, and I'm such a stickler now for like, oh, this works good enough, don't worry about it, it's fine. But with rocks and seams, I'm like, nope, got to fix it. It's less of a problem now with things like Substance Painter and triplanar mapping, but even so, it's still like, I need to fix that,
Are you pretty, in the weeds? Are you pretty hands-on with like material making and stuff like
these kind of different post processes sort of stacked, and then for a combination of like resolution changes, a lot of the effects I achieve are through shaders, especially on the VFX side. There's objects in my game that have just got built-in materials, just using PBR stuff, but the way the post processes like crunches it down just makes it sort of pop, and it can be a bit fiddly when you're trying to like texture a character and you're balancing it in the engine after the post processes, because you sort of like lose control a little bit because it's not like what you see is what you get. When I think back to the main camera in the game with all the post processing, including a lot of like screen space effects that I do, they are nearly all image effects, like I think so there's like crunch and resolution, color, some contrast, there's a vignette in there, and there's like sort of screen overlays, so like when you get hit and it goes red, I just alert that up, like Playmaker's really good for just sort of sorting that stuff out. Like you can add stuff like that in about 5 minutes and it just adds so much.
I remember some dude made a custom actions package like some years back that basically gives you access to all the values of your post-processing stack.
Oh no, I'm being really bad in setting properties, which as far as I know is bad to do, right? But now that you've even, because I didn't even know that was a thing, right? I can go back, look that up in the ecosystem and be like, oh, okay, I'll give that a go, and that's great. That's been this whole project actually, is me being like, oh, there's a thing for that, I'm gonna give that a go and see if I can integrate that into my project. And actually, I've been known to spend ages trying to not script something, but like, node something up in PlayMaker where it's like, oh, I need to do this. Yeah, I guess so. Like I'm trying to get this thing working, and I'm like, you know what? I've spent a day on that, and I can't get it working. Why don't I just see if it's on the ecosystem or whatever? And it is, and I'm like, damn it! Like I wish I thought of that first,
It's the same problem every single time where it's just like, Steven, haven't you learned your lesson that you could just type in some keywords on the ecosystem first, or sometimes even in the Playmaker forums, and somebody has thought of this before me,
I mean, I've been working on Hellscreen quite a long time, and
how long is that now, by the way? How long have you been working?
Oh man, oh god, I think I want to say I started the first prototype about 6 years ago.
6
right?
fucking years.
But I will say this, right? That when I say the prototype, that was, I'm going to use Playmaker for the first time and see if I can do like I was doing a Devil Daggers thing, because initially I was only going to work, this is going to be a little 6-month thing in my spare time, and then I'm going to put it out there, maybe do a bit of marketing, see, just so I could say, hey, I'm an indie developer now because I've actually put something out, which is a stupid barrier to entry to put on yourself, but whatever.
I'm right there with you, by the way.
Right. You're not legit until you put something out. Is just it's bollocks. But like once I got the art style sort of a bit more down, and I started putting out GIFs, like suddenly people were interested. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe this can be this bigger thing. And then I had like a publisher approach me and be like, oh, cool, well, we'd like to, yeah. And I was like, oh, because to me, like getting a publisher was something that didn't happen. I mean, this is, there was indies back then, but I never knew of a publisher's approaching you. Usually you approach them, and I was nowhere near that stage. And they were like, yeah, we'd like to put it out. It's like, cool. And it just sort of like, oh, maybe I could actually turn this into a bigger thing. And it just sort of went from there, really. And like I say, like I contract work. I do freelance work. So this has always been a part-time thing, which is great in some ways and horrible in others. I mean, like, it's good if I need to take a break, I just can, or because I have to. But then sometimes you're just itching to work on it and get cracking. Really, you can't because you've got bills to pay. But that's the indie choice, isn't it? So.
Or it's something that we all have to deal with, no matter how much we hate. There are some people who are more fortunate than others, who get to work on it a little more often, who get to scratch that itch, so it doesn't come riling up all the time. But that's definitely, I mean, you having a publisher approach you, I can imagine that making it even more, like, oh, somebody believes in me, somebody wants me to do this, and you especially...
Well, it's validation, right?
Huh? Yeah, exactly.
And that was it, because I was like, oh, I'm working on this thing in my spare time for me. If this person thinks they can make money out of it, then it's actually the early, and I don't like referring to games like this, but it's a product which people want to spend money on. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I've always wanted to be indie, like, but I'd because I do environment art, I never had the skill set to code anything. And I've got friends that I make games with, but they do full-time work as well, and I didn't want to rely on other people. So that's why I picked up PlayMaker, and it just sort of went from there. And, Hellscreen, like, I'm learning to code as I'm making Hellscreen, like, which is great. It's great that I can do that with PlayMaker, right? But it's at the same time, it's like, oh man, like, God, I just wish I could just do it like that and it's just done, But every time I get something right, it just feels so good. Like when you just get something working, it's like, oh yeah, that's a hit, a dopamine right there.
It's crack. It is crack.
It really is, yeah.
There are a few things in this life that for me are as addicting as being able to work on some, and more specifically, let's like rein it in here and say adding new features, right? Adding new features is just the funnest shit in the world, because like if you could, those times too when you're programming something and you nail it the first time, you hit play that first run and it works. And
what a dream! What a dream! Yeah.
Why would you ever want to leave your fucking computer chair if you could keep doing that?
Well, I mean, but this is it. This is why I don't play games, right? Because it's sort of like, I just want to make something.
I hear you. Like,
I'm a mechanics guy. I'm not really a story guy. So it's when I don't play a lot of AAA, but when I'm sat for a cutscene, I just check out. I'm like, I've probably got 20 minutes to play this game before I've got to go somewhere else. I don't care. Like, just put something in my hands, It's really something when you get something going. It can be something simple, like, oh, this guy jumps now. Like, hey guys, check it out. This guy jumps. Like, been doing that since the 70s, but that's fine, like...
Literally last night, just yesterday in the evening, I had some friends come over. I told them, I was like, hey guys, like, would you be interested in learning how to make video games? You want to come over? I'll give you a crash course. We'll do a little boot camp thing. Just a few hours, sit you down, and I'll teach you how to make video games. And they came over, never having made games in their life. And we sat there and I kind of ran them through how to use PlayMaker and Unity and stuff. And when they got to a part in this little course where they were just spawning cubes that had rigid bodies on them, and those cubes were being put next to like doors that when you click on, they just open and close. That's how I talked about how to spawn cubes and how to make a door that opens and closes. But when they were both together and they started duplicating the doors, so every time a door would open, it would push cubes and push them out of the way. Even though I wasn't the one doing it, I was like, that is still so fucking satisfying.
And there's like a minimum amount of knowledge you need to actually get cracking. And I think it's input and triggers. And once you've got those two things, you can pretty much come up with most stuff. And like some of the things I would try and do with triggers, because I could not be bothered to learn like UI or other stuff. I used to try and do like kind of, Rube Goldberg machines? Yeah, Rube. Yeah, right. Yeah. I used to do that with like triggers and things. It's like, oh well, maybe if if I score a point, it'll like spawn this cube here, and that'll push that up, and that'll be like a count. And because I just didn't want to deal with a UI, like I used to experiment with stuff back then. But it's just like, input triggers. That's all you need, and you could just make a game with input. Sometimes I've got like a cube I've just prototyped, and he's running around an arena. I'm like, hey, this feels fun. I wouldn't sell it, but it feels fun,
Like, when did you start programming at all? Like, did you ever, learn how to code in school? Did you, where does it start?
No.
So I remember trying to mod Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, but that was still only level stuff. So maybe I looked at scripting, but I didn't know where to begin because we didn't really have much in the way of like really good tutorials back then. I think I did some scripting at university on the university bespoke engine they had, but again, I didn't really understand it. I'm really bad with text. Like blocks of text just make me go weird, right? I remember trying to do some stuff in GameMaker, and I did like a really small prototype, which was it was a cross between. Do you get Skeletrix in America? It's the like race cars that are on rails. It's like
oh, you mean those toys where like you put the race car on like a track, but it's like it has a little crease in it and it stays on the track?
Yeah, and you've got a trigger and you can kind of drive around the track, right?
Yes, yeah.
I wanted to do a game which was that, but with like ice physics and one button. So it was like you're either accelerating or you're slowing down, but you got ice physics. It was just about kind of getting the right. Yeah, and I did that in GameMaker, and then kind of got a bit stuck, and then gave up. And then I think the next time I picked up it was like I say, I think when I got PlayMaker, and then I just kind of I spent a few weekends on that. But you spend a few hours, you get something going. It's like, right, I know I can do this now. This isn't just like I'm not going to get to the point where there's going to be so much code I don't understand what it does. It's going to be more just working out what the nodes are, because all the nodes are they're labeled so nicely in the action button thing, like with all the descriptions. Like, oh, cool. Once you can think logically, you can make a game like with that system, and that's just cool. That was Hellscreen as well. I wouldn't ever call Hellscreen my first game, because I've made other stuff since then, like since I started Hellscreen. But like, it is still technically my first game, which is why I would never want anyone to look at the Unity project, because they would probably execute me for crimes against humanity, to be honest.
But yeah, you said 6 years. I was thinking like, okay, maybe this guy kind of had like some iteration of the game and probably did other projects in between. And so it sounds like you've done like game jams or stuff like that, or are they?
Yeah. So it was interesting because it allowed me to do game jams by myself, which makes me sound really antisocial. But it was just more, I feel like jamming. I'm gonna do Game Boy Jam, or I did the Game Maker's Toolkit Jam not that long ago, but I pressed the wrong button to submit it, so it didn't get submitted, and I've
been there, man.
I was pissed. I was so angry.
Me too.
Because I'd spent like my partner took me out for a beer. It's like, come on, we're going out for a walk, Jamie. You need to chill out. But I mean, that was cool because again, like you spend, I never do 48 hours in game jams. I tend to do closer to about 16. I don't do it all night. I just work in small bunches, but get sleep.
Sure. Good on you. Being healthy.
Yeah, well, it's more because I don't want to be hungover or or that equivalent of hungover, and because you've got work the following week, you don't want to be working on 20%, But yeah, thank you. I whenever I see a game jam and it's 48 hours, I'm like, oh, that's not for me. 2 weeks are the good ones.
Okay, noted.
Yeah. And
for me, that takes up my whole life. Then that becomes this whole thing. Whenever I hear,
yeah, but that's what's good about it. So I can absolutely just immerse myself in that game jam for 2 weeks, right? Life pending, because you've got other stuff as well. And then I can just give it my all. And then, I mean, what will usually happen is after those 2 weeks, I never want to see it again because I'm sick of it, right? But I like when it comes to like getting reference and stuff, like it's everywhere on my computer. Like I'm breathing it in. It's just everywhere. That I listen to music, films. Once I get a vibe, I'm just going to run with that. But then after that, I don't ever want to see it again. Like once I did a solo game jam, I was like, oh, I can make stuff by myself and put it on itch. Again, that was cool because suddenly I felt legit. People, you put stuff up for free and they pay for it. I'm like, wow, that really is validation. Like I think I've made about
the pay for you want stuff. They kind of tip you. Is that what's happening?
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
I get really worried about how polished to make Hellscreen, right? Like this is something I've been thinking about a lot because bearing in mind that like I've worked in the games industry at studios for I don't know 11 years, and I've been freelancing for the last 3 or 4. Those numbers might be wrong, but it's been a long time, right? So I'm used to things have got to be perfect. If they're not perfect, you've got to crunch. But what I've sort of realised, especially with indie games, is, and this isn't a diss, I think it's actually a positive, they're not quite as polished as I'd make my own stuff. But what I've realised is I'm probably the one in the wrong. I think people give indie games a little bit more of they give them more slack because they know it's probably a couple of people, their budgets are low, and all that, right? And that was the thing that I thought was interesting about the stuff that I put on Itch, was to me it was like, oh god, there's holes everywhere, it's not very polished, there's bugs. But I don't think people cared because they just enjoyed that, 15-20 minutes they probably didn't play it for. And one of the things I put up was it was almost like an idle game. You're on the idea is you're sat on a train and you're watching the scenery go past, and every so often it changes, and the only interaction you've got is you pick where you want to go, and there's different train lines, and you pick one and then you go to the end and then you can do the other one, and you can unlock them. And I put it up there. I made it for a game jam. Some people liked it. They liked the gifts of it more than the game themselves, which is a problem, but fine. But then a few people paid money for it, and I was like, oh wow. And it's just because it was a mood. It was more of a mood and a vibe than it was an actual video game, because they could actually just put it on there. I'm looking at my secondary screen. Just put it on there. It's called Station to Station, right? It's a PlayMaker joint.
Nice.
And it was like it was a 2-week thing, and I think I spent at least 6 days on it.
So here's kind of what's coming to mind too, is that like you're saying that you work in the games industry. It's been years now, right? And you're talking about all this polish that people expect out of you. So what are you doing? What exactly are you doing right now? I don't know. I guess I didn't really have a good grasp on like what your day job contract work stuff is.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a generalist. So, but with a focus on the environment and VFX and shader side. But I'm not as technical as other technical artists. But and then it's all within Unity. So I'm using Amplify shader. I work a lot with materials and lighting. It's usually environments. I work with a lot of indies actually on the freelance side. Just props. Some of it was environments. Like sort of more recently, I've been doing. I'm working on a project I can't really talk about, but I've been doing more design work, which is great. Like level design specifically, which is great because that is tying into me learning and teaching myself level design for Hellscreen. And it's really good sort of just reading up on Hellscreen, using that in Hellscreen, but then kind of like taking a step back and trying to use it in these other projects as well, because these projects are different, and it just keeps me on my toes thinking about designing in more than one genre. So like what I'm doing at the moment is I work 4 days a week between 3 and 4 days a week on that, and then I try and work Thursdays and Fridays on Hellscreen, at least half a day on a Saturday, sometimes the whole day. Sundays I always take off. That's my one sort of rule, is I've got to have Sundays off. That being said, recently I'm like, if I can feel myself tiring or burning out, I slow it way the hell down. Like way the hell down. Like there was a British games event last weekend, and I'm like, I'm gonna not work this weekend because I'm gonna be tired from that, and that's fine. Like I do think part of working in indie stuff is allowing yourself to take time off and not stressing about it. Especially because I want Hellscreen out next year, like sort of this time next year. That's not a lot of time considering what I've still got loads to do. It's just me. Just doing QA is going to take months. Like, do you know what I mean? But it's like I'm not gonna panic because I'm going to try and make decisions which mean I don't have to panic in the future, and that's what it's all about. It
sounds like you have a very healthy grasp on work-life balance, because you're talking about taking breaks. You're very cognizant, right, of how you're feeling, literally just checking in with your body or your emotions or whatever the hell it is. Is that something that you've had to hone? Is that something you've had to learn about, or have you had that shit on lock since the beginning?
Oh no, I was bad with that stuff. It's especially I burned out a few times in the games industry for sure. I reckon at least twice. Hindsight being what it is. There's been times with Hellscreen I'm like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. But that feeling's only 70% of what that feeling actually is. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it, but I actually do want to do it, because when I think to what I want the game to be and how I see it playing in my head, I think it'll be fun. I don't think it's going to be Doom Eternal or anything like that, but I think it's going to be its own thing, and hopefully there'll be a few interesting ideas of people like, oh, that's kind of cool, and that's all I want, you know. There was a point where I just felt obliged to work on it, and I just wasn't enjoying it, and I would take months out from it. I don't know, I just need some distance, and I'll just go through these waves of like, I love it, I hate it, that's fine, you know. Right now I'm loving it, but in terms of that work-life balance,
glad to hear that.
Yeah, right,
yeah.
Good thing, I suppose. Like with the work-life balance, a lot of that comes from me going freelance and actually really trying to work out how much, like, what is my time worth, you know? And once you are able to dictate how much you work and how much you're paid for that for me changed everything. That took a while, and like in the first few jobs, I definitely undercharged and overworked. As I sort of worked on that more and tried to be more confident, then it sort of fell into place.
What changed that? What made you reconsider sort of like the value of your time and stuff like that? Because for a lot of people that takes like their whole lives to get to. You know, a lot of people, some people never even get there. They're just constantly underselling themselves. So I'm kind of wondering, was there something that happened, or did you read or watch a video or something?
That's a good question.
I mean, like I'm always watching and reading about that kind of life, like work-life balance, especially in games as well. Like the whole crunch issue. Like, I mean, I'm kind of a bit bored of this course now, but like crunch is bullshit, right? Like it doesn't help anyone. For a start, once I realised I could be paid more as a freelancer to do basically less work I say less, that kind of work smart, not hard thing, right? Once I worked that out, right, I don't have to commute into the office, I don't have to do this, don't have to do that. There's other things you've got to take on board, like taxes and all that, right? You know what, maybe life isn't about working 9 to 5 all the time. Like maybe actually humans weren't built to do that, which is why there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of mental health issues, because, you know, at least in London, you know, you wake up at 7, you get crammed onto a train at 8, you're in work by 9 or 10, you're working 8 hours, and then you do the same thing on the way home, and then you get 2 hours, 3 hours to chill out. Like, is that what we're supposed to do? And I know that sounds a bit like hippie or whatever, and I, you know, if someone had said that to me 10 years ago, we're like, oh, that's a bit weird. But now it's sort of like, no, I get it. Like I get, you know, 4-day weeks, they're awesome. Like smaller days, they're great. Like it's, you know, I've certainly been happier working for myself and realizing how much my free time is worth and how important it is. And I think it was like an ongoing thing for sure. It definitely wasn't like all right, now I'm just aware of work-life balance. I'm not going to crunch again, and that, you know, that was a few years into my job, because I was like, oh, crunch is just a thing you do. That's just part of the industry. And then when I burned out and met a couple of worked at other companies that had better ideas about how to maintain that. You know, I worked at a startup and they're like, we don't crunch.
Nice.
We just don't do that.
Nice. Yeah, because then you kind of have that that validation of like somebody else who runs something and says like it's important to run things this way.
That's right. And I think also that job, because I was in a bit more of I don't think I started off in a senior position, but by the end of it I felt listened to and respected, and that goes a long way actually. When you feel part of something bigger rather than a cog in the machine, I think it gives you confidence credits or whatever, and you can use them in other parts of your life. It just comes down to that thing of, like you say, listening to yourself. If I work till 10 or 11 at night PM, I'm gonna feel crap the next day. That's just because, you know, I'm 37 now. Like I can't, maybe 10 years ago, but even then I don't think I felt that great about it. I was just perpetually tired and didn't give myself the break to realise it. You know, because, you know, being in your 20s.
No, and that I think a lot of people don't listen to themselves, who say like, oh no, I have it in the bag, this is me, like I feel fine and everything. But then like I also see on a regular basis going like, oh, I'm so tired, and I'm like, what happened to when you were saying you're fine? I think a lot of people also just won't admit it, right? They kind of there's maybe some there's some machismo sort of, like, you know, there's like people take pride in sort of like saying that they're like infatigable, you know. Yeah,
it's definitely that. But I think the current world pandemic we're going through has been awful, right? I mean, for a lot of people. But the thing for me was, it made me really realise about time management, because suddenly I had more time to do these things, which I'm like, oh, I'll do that next week, or I'll do that week after, like, but because I suddenly couldn't see my friends or go to the pub, I suddenly started realising that, oh, if I got this time, I can do all this stuff. And I, you know, in the space of a week, I got into like 3D printing. I learned Blender, and I got into bloody Gundam models.
Which aren't built, but I bought them, right?
You got into Gundam models. Had you ever had a Gundam model in your life before this point?
Yeah, you know what? I bought one, oh my god, probably about 20 years ago, after seeing Gundam Wing as a cartoon show on this one channel. And I saw it, I thought, oh, I'm going to buy it, and I didn't realise it was like a proper Gunpla model. So I've done it once, like years ago. But because to be honest, I was fascinated by it. I want to make stuff, I want to make real stuff. Like I want to learn how to paint models. I was just like in a kind of VFX way, like a special effects way rather. And once I got into that mindset of my time is more valuable when I'm rested and not hungover, right? It really started from that, and that was the thing. And so like once I realised that maybe I could change my lifestyle a little bit, so maybe I'm not perpetually having. Do you have FOMO in America?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Right. Like once I dealt with that, and it, I do think that's a proper like anxiety thing. Once you get over that, I was like, cool. I'm at ease with myself and my time. I don't feel like I'm missing anything out there. I can finally get around to modelling a spaceship, or learning Blender, or learning to sculpt, or maybe I'll just sit in and watch a movie because I've got the time now. Like.
And that was it for me.
Got obliterated when the pandemic happened.
Oh man, I mean, like
you're missing out on. There's nothing to miss out on. Everybody else is inside their house doing nothing.
Yeah, especially because I made a point of, and some of my friends that do this, not all of them because they're good people. Not that you have to be bad people, but the point is like some of them started drinking pretty often at home, right? And I was like, I don't want to do that.
I witnessed that.
Right. Yeah, and they weren't going too over the top, but I was like, that feels like a slippery slope for me. I think I'm just gonna, I don't know, model something in Blender. You know what I mean? Like it was one of those kind of things, or watch a film, or catch up on a series, or there was so many things that I kept thinking I really want to do that one day. And I had this list of retirement projects, things I'm going to do when I'm retired. And then I remember looking at this thinking, like the retirement age in England, well, the UK, keeps going up. Like, am I ever going to get a chance to do this? Like, am I really going to want to build like Gundam Wing Zero when I'm 79? Maybe not. But Hellscreen production's gone up loads in the pandemic because suddenly I had loads more time, But it was a weird thing because I work from home anyway. The pandemic thing was it wasn't so much of a full-on shift as more as a bit of a duck and slide, I mean, I'm glad to be seeing my friends again and all that because it's a big part of keeping myself happy, but at the same time, are you coming out tonight? No, I think I'm gonna chill, and by chill I mean I'm gonna do some level design or something, I've also got into the habit of this sounds really bad, winding down by watching like YouTube tutorials.
I'm not, okay, let me tell you, Dumb Game Dev, the YouTube channel Dumb Game, he makes PlayMaker tutorials.
No? Okay. Oh, I've probably seen it. I'm just bad with names.
So I legit, he just has like nice long ones, usually kind of about shit that like I haven't quite wrapped my head around yet. They're just very peaceful, quiet. The audio's good, and I'll use those videos to like knock out to. Like I'll be learning PlayMaker shit and just kind of like okay, and just zonk out. So I totally hear you on that. Like that's a way to wind down for me too. Is like to watch tutorials.
There are things I've seen on YouTube in YouTube for like 3-minute videos, and they've fundamentally changed how I work. Just professional and like indie life, and like being excited again. I feel like I'm excited. Like I've just seen everything in a new light. It's just something else. Like and least of all, like using these new sort of skills and things from YouTube just means I can make the game quicker, which is ultimately what I want to do, right? Because time is money, and as it is right now, I'm self-funding Hellscreen, and there's a runway, and it's approaching. You know what I mean? Like it's over there, I can see it. But it's good knowing that I can. Maybe it hasn't got to be perfect. It can be a bit less polished, and maybe I can do it quicker if I do it this way. Using this software, that's the sweet spot for me,
Yeah, the question I ask everybody, and I forgot to ask you, I should have asked you earlier, is have you played a game that has made you cry? Especially earlier when you said like, oh, you play games mostly for the mechanics and stuff and not necessarily the story. And like, by the way, same here. A lot of the times I check out for like cutscenes and stuff. But that's not to say that like, you know, the context of it, the quote unquote story, the characters of it, you can still play action games that have that. So I'm kind of wondering like, how far have games taken you like emotionally?
That is a good question. I'm going to say probably not very far.
Sure.
Because, like, there are certain feelings that games have evoked in me, right? They're that kind of nebulous things like flow, like Tetris flow, right? You know, when you zone out. Games haven't really made me cry, which is a shame because, like, people tell me stories about how they reacted to that particular Final Fantasy death. I'm not going to spoil it, even though it's game's got 30 years old or something mad like that. I knew that, so it didn't affect me going in, right? I knew from the beginning this character's going to die. Don't give him any materia.
Whatever. Live up someone else to it.
Don't invest in
Players will optimize the fun out of the games.
Yeah, right.
The reason why I play games is because I want to see new worlds, like new worlds with cool art direction. That's why I play them. It's not even really about escapism. It's about like, I suppose it's more like exploration or like video game tourism, right? Like going through these worlds, seeing what their tech's like and the look of it. So I guess like when I see something cool, I'm like, wow. Like the biggest emotion it'll get out of me is it'll get my imagination going about something else. Like, oh, what if this but that, or you know, that's really cool. Games haven't even really made me laugh, and I don't know if it's probably the games I'm playing, but also there's that part of you which is analysing them, right? Do you know what I mean? Like I'm trying. I don't want to say critical. Yeah, and I remember thinking, oh, this is quite sad. When is it the vanishing of Ethan?
Oh yeah, of Ethan Carter.
Right. Is that the one with all the different sub games, right?
I've only played like maybe the first hour of it or something. I remember it's like a walking simulator.
Yeah.
And there are some puzzles to it. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's the one I'm thinking of, I did think that was somewhat tragic. Like, if I remember in the story correctly, I thought, that's sad. But I wasn't moved to tears or anything. Which is weird, because I get moved to tears pretty easily.
For movies and music and stuff? TV shows?
Not music, yeah, but that's more... That actually ties back to that feeling of elation. Like, if I'm listening to a particular track and I feel like, oh, man, I can imagine myself flying to it, I'll get, like... choked up, but in a good way, right? But like anything, this is a very bespoke thing. I really like stories about very particular guys not being toxic masculine and actually connecting and expressing themselves, right? In a platonic way. Not that I'm adverse to anything else.
No, but I hear you, because maybe that's where you're coming from.
I've got friends that find it really hard to talk about feelings, so when I see that on TV, it really gets me. Like anything with people connecting, but that's like a subset that I really gets me going. Anything father and son, that's another thing. I don't know what I'm saying about my personal issues with this, but you know, there is. Just talking about connecting generally. Like I just finished Schitt's Creek. Oh man, by the end, I was in pieces. Like it's when you see people that are going through that kind of stuff and they feel seen by other people and supported, that's the thing that gets me. You know, that's like, oh god, look at that, that's beautiful.
Yeah, moments of like you're not alone.
Right, yeah, and just people being able to express how they feel about each other, you know, on across the gender spectrum or whatever. Do you know what I mean? That's people connecting, especially if those people are different as well. You know, I hope one day that humanity will be okay. You know what I mean? That's a kind of, you know, I grew up watching right, like I grew up watching Star Trek: Next Generation, so I'm hoping we're gonna be good, but goddamn, you just don't know.
The moment that you say that you're into Star Trek, I immediately go like, oh, here's somebody who's concerned with like the interconnectivity and well-being of all the peoples of the world, because that's literally Star Trek. I hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some really close friends, and we were talking about this. I said the one thing you can say to me, which makes me realise how important I am to you in terms of our friendship, is, "Are you all right, mate? Like, are you all right? Are you okay?" And it's just like, and it's such a simple phrase, but it just doesn't. Sometimes I think that's why people really internalise and just get worse because they just don't feel recognised or seen, and that's heartbreaking to me. Like, I try and be the person that if I'm at a games event and I see someone struggling to get involved, I try and bring them in a way which makes them feel comfortable. Like, I try and do that. It's not always successful, but it's hard sometimes, you know.
Right, because you for people like that, because I've been in similar situations where seeing somebody that's having a hard time joining in or just kind of like feeling a part of it, but they've taken that first step, you know, they've showed up. And you know, it that could be a delicate process too, because sometimes you don't want to like push it, you don't want to overstep your bounds.
And showing up is such a underestimated thing, right? Like it's, you know, sometimes just showing up is such a feat of strength. And when I look at them, I'm like, and I've spoken to them about it, and they're telling me, yeah, I've showed up, I'm here, and I'm like, that's great. Like, that's like, well done. Do you know what I mean? Because I've felt like that sometimes. Like,
you've shown up a lot to your own game because you're prepping to hopefully ship this thing that's like, from the videos and stuff I've seen, you've taken it pretty far. What are your hopes and what are your expectations?
So I want the game out sort of last quarter of next year. I love working on it, but I just want to be done with it because I want to make other stuff. I have never QA'd a game before. It might be that October 31 release isn't the full game, it's actually early access.
Okay, sure.
Games are a business, and I do know that if I put the game out in early access, I'll probably cut my revenue in half. From the research I've done, that's it. Eventually that will show up later on down the line. The rest of my own money is going into this game. If it game doesn't do that well, but it's early access and I haven't got enough money, then that's an issue, right? There's a lot of pressure on. There'll be more marketing stuff leading up to that. I'm hoping to be a part of Realms Deep 2022. It's like an online event hosted by 3D Realms. Hellscreen actually, it didn't debut there. Trying to come up with a demo which is short enough where people want more, but not too long where they get enough of it, right? Hellscreen's got a bit of a Metroidvania to it. You're going to be backtracking through bits in a very quick and efficient way. It's not going to be boring, I think. If there's parts in a level where you need this thing in an hour's time to get back here and unlock it, how do I make that work in a demo? And I think it's that question of what is it am I trying to show? Like, what do I need to show to people? So it's very weird. Like, it's an interesting design problem because
I was just about to say the same thing. That kind of, in a way, it's fun because that's a weird thing to consider, like how much to feed the people that you're also trying to see the full thing eventually.
But there's been a few things I've made recently. Like, I feel like I should save that one because that's gonna be cool when people. Hopefully, that'll be something people talk about. You know. Right. Exactly. Feedback's key, right? You want to get people playing it, and because they'll come up with problems you've not even thought about yet. You know, but it's weird. You don't want to get people working for you for free, but what do you do? Like, how do you? It's such a tough problem. Like,
okay, so here's where I'm coming from. This is just my 2 cents. Right. I think that there are people who I would play your game for free and let you know what I think of it and what breaks on me and stuff like that. And there are plenty of people who I think will do it for free because the exchange is that you're giving them a game to play for free that you're eventually going to charge people for, and they can choose to be like, this isn't even fun, I don't even want to play, and then stop. You know, that's totally on them. But a lot of people, I find that, like, if they're telling you they're stoked on even just trying your game, often it'll take them to that next level of they will continue to play and give you feedback. I think you should just ask any of your community, any like friends and people interested so far, myself included, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. No, part of the reason why things take so long is because I was focusing on a publisher demo as well, right? And even that was, I was like, well, what do I show the publishers? Because that you really do feel like you need to show everything. You know, I ran that through some friends and I got some killer feedback. Not just from what they were telling me, but me just sort of watching them, like 6 foot behind them, going like, oh, he's done that, he's not seen where to go, like, and that was really cool. So it is useful. Once you get over that thing of, oh god, I've got to show him this thing that's not finished. Once you get over that, it is really exciting because they will come up with ideas, or at the very least, like, let you know you're on the right track. And that was the thing. Like, I had a few friends play it, and I was like, and they came up with ideas I was kind of thinking about implementing, about how to improve things. I'm like, all right, some of these people are, you know, like some of the best designers I've ever met. So that's great that they're kind of we're aligned in our way of thinking. And I was sort of playing Hellscreen, and I was like, would I have fun with my own game bearing in mind that I don't have fun with a lot of people's games. I'm not sat there thinking, you know what, this is fun. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like Spider-Man on PS4 is really, it's cool. But I'm not like, wow, this is fun. Like, it's such a weird metric, and it's.
Well, I guess what was the last game that you couldn't put down? What was the last game that you were just like, shit, I'm jonesing to play? Because maybe that is at least a good North Star.
Ghetto Roboto. Have you seen this?
No.
It's like it's a 2D 1-bit Metroidvania with a cat and a robot suit.
That sounds familiar.
Oh, it's rocking. It's so the music in it. Like, I want to buy the soundtrack if it exists. Oh, Quake. I got addicted to again, but
same here. I sank hella hours into Quake recently.
Oh man, because like me and my partner have been playing it co-op, and that changes the game completely in a way that I love it.
Is it blasphemy, by the way, to have my key always ready to hit F5 though?
No. What's that called? Safe scumming. I do that all the time. Like
for Quake especially. I think you're allowed. I think you're allowed a pass.
But like, I always play games on easy. Like, I don't care. Like, I
fuck out of here. You play games on easy? You don't even do normal. You don't go. You go straight down to the. Whoa.
Straight down to easy.
Because again, I'm not playing for story. Like, I wanna get in flow with the controls and the mechanics, right? If I play something like not Doom Eternal, let's say Doom, right?
Wait, classic Doom or like reboot 2016 Doom?
2016, which I think is a masterpiece.
It is.
I bounce off Eternal a little bit, but I need more time with it, really. You know, I'm playing Doom Eternal. I'm shooting things. I've died. What happens? I just respawn. Like, what have I lost? Like, apart from time, and time's valuable. So it's just like, whatever. I mean, you do feel good when you beat something after trying, but. I'm very impatient with games. I tend to get a bit frustrated with I ain't gonna play this anymore. You know, if I don't get a game straight away, I'm like, the signal's bad in this, I don't want to play it. I mean, go back to like Hellscreen fun. I think it is fun. And when I'm just moving around, not even shooting anything, I'm like, this feels fun. I like the flow of it. That's cool. And that's that thing of once you get the movement right, you're most of the way there. It's just getting the guns right now, guns and the enemies and the level design. And the sound and the signaling.
And etc.
I'm going to try and put my money where my mouth is, and, you know, would rather scope down rather than do crunch. I changed the map system. You're running around, you press tab, the map pops out in front of you, and it's meant to kind of just surround you. And I'm like, this is okay, but I think I can do better. And once I got to that point of, I think I should redo this, basically I had it so when you press tab, you more or less get transported to another. In terms of code, you get transported to a specific map room. You know, you're in the normal world, you press tab, you get warped to the map world. You can move around and all that, you can look around, but the minute you press tab, you're exactly where you was before, right? And it was such a minor thing, but I'm like, there's a Game Maker's toolkit on Downwell and about using that. There's a Shigeru Miyamoto quote about the best solutions solve more than one problem, or they solve two problems, right? Which is why in Downwell the jump button is the same as the fire button, and when you land you reload, and that just ties in, right? And I was like, if my main interaction with the world is shooting, then shooting should do absolutely everything.
I love
right?
That's so good.
So right, and it opens doors, it flicks switches. You know, having the map screen be like an inventory or a Pokédex or that's cool to me. That seems interesting, you know.
And that does remind me too. It's funny, it's the Miyamoto quote. That's like, I'm thinking of Mario 64. You jump through the paintings. Like if Mario's all about running and jumping, you get into the worlds by running and jumping into the.
Yeah.
It's like I hear a lot of people too. They're like they ask about getting ideas that you could stick with, and you know. I think in a lot of ways it's just kind of like falling in love or whatever. I'm glad to hear that you're very much in love still. You know?
Yeah. I feel like I've been like married. Yeah, right. I was gonna say, I feel you know, it's gonna be our like 7-year anniversary soon. You know, that's great. You know, I probably shouldn't let my partner hear that.
Well, you know, I've really enjoyed this conversation, man. This has been fucking awesome.
Yeah, likewise.